the Floridaville. Get to know the people behind the Florida names you know. I'm your host, Rosanna Catalano. On this episode, we get to know Melanie Griffin. She is a business law attorney with Shumaker and Kendrick, as well as the founder of Spread Your Sunshine, a company that provides products, tools, and resources to help you find joy and achieve your dreams. Melanie is extremely accomplished, and I'm so excited to have her on the show. She is an AV rated attorney and has been honored by super lawyers for the past 12 consecutive years, Florida Trend Legal Elite for 10 years, and Best Lawyers in America for 5 consecutive years. She has also been recognized as Florida's most productive young lawyer in 2009 and received the Florida Bar Young Lawyers Division Outstanding Woman Lawyer of Achievement Award in 2018. I'm proud to be able to call her a friend. We are recording remotely today. I'm in my office in Tallahassee, and Melanie is speaking to us from her home office in Tampa. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Thank you for having me. And if you had cut in even 1 second sooner, you would have seen me like dancing over here to your music. I love it and all the pictures. So thank you for having me today.
Thanks for being here. So, tell our audience how you came up with the idea for Spread Your Sunshine.
It really was a twofold mission at the beginning. One was that I love mentoring and do a lot of it and needed a way to scale that process because I was having so many one-on-one conversations, which is wonderful. But it was starting to get to the point where it was a third full-time job, meaning, my first job to my employer, my second job serving the community. And then all of a sudden, all these wonderful people I met through those two things had questions and wanted advice, but it was difficult to get that information out in a myriad of one-on-one conversations. So I wanted to be able to scale that mentorship capability. And then two, I realized that if I could have a brand that even complemented my full-time at then law practice, now Spread Your Sunshine has spun off into its own project. But at the time, again, even complimenting what I did on a day-to-day basis, that if I had a brand where people always thought of me, whether it be in terms of color, project, theme, etc., which I think probably Spread Your Sunshine checks all those boxes, but that would be a huge thing to accomplish. And certainly is something I feel like over the years we've done through Spread Your Sunshine.
So, how has your business evolved from its initial concept?
Initially, yeah. 100%. So I would say a couple of key differences. One is that initially it was meant to be a passion project that complemented my full-time law practice. It wasn't meant to be a spin-off standalone business. And so even the fact that it's become its own business and its own company with its own projects that isn't just complementing another business or another employer is significant. Two, I would tell you that when I first established Spread Your Sunshine, I like to always joke that I had my website, spreadyoursunshine.com, and on it, the landing page said coming soon. And the joke is that it took 22 months for me to even begin building out that website. So it should have said not coming soon, but coming in a really long time. But long story short, it also just taught me the value of getting something out into the world, because people didn't judge me for that, or maybe some people did, but I didn't hear about it. But most people just started to hear about the movement and the project and loved it. And it was amazing all the good that I could do without even having some of the tangible resources like a beautiful graphic design or a well built out website or an e-commerce shop or whatever it may be, just starting the project and putting one foot in front of the other. And that's something I've tried to adopt now in other projects or in my business life as I take new endeavors on.
I think that's a wonderful point that you make, because as a business owner, you have to just do. And that's
Mhm.
really hard to get used to, because if you think about it too much, it won't happen. It'll be delayed. Like, just do. And even if it takes time, you're still moving in the right direction. So it's all good. I know for myself, being a business owner is a roller coaster of emotions. I have good days and I have bad days. Was there ever a time when you thought of throwing in the towel? And if so, what stopped you?
I don't think that I've ever quite thought of throwing in the towel. I also don't think I've had a standalone business long enough to get to that point. But There are times when it's tough. And one of the toughest times I remember, like it was yesterday, and it practically was, but at the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020, so we're taping this episode in July 2021. It's now been a good 18 or so months. But at the time in March 2020, I had really worked on my keynote speaking services and was to the point that those were transitioning from being things that I did for either free or for a nominal fee to being a core part of my business because I had developed this expertise and had so much experience. And I had a couple of keynotes that were lined up for 2020, one that was at the end of March. So, I mean, it was literally days away. Another one that was later in 2020 that were really significant opportunities in terms of promoting the brand and starting to build that side of the business. And overnight, they were just gone, right? I mean, we canceled every in-person event that we had. And so as you all know who are watching this more than likely, that really had an impact on in-person vendors like myself, who for the most part gave in-person presentations and sold goods in person. Not that we couldn't do it virtually or online or e-commerce, but there was an inability to really connect as well with the consumer, and or people weren't necessarily used to paying for things online. So it was more difficult to secure, say, a paid speaking engagement in the electronic realm than it was in the in-person realm for a big conference where maybe attendees were paying fees. So certainly, I don't think I don't think I wanted to toss in the towel, but certainly in that moment, I felt like it had been tossed in for me. I'll put it that way. And it was devastating to work through that emotion. And I like to tell people that as sunny of a disposition as I have, one of the biggest things that I do believe in is a period of mourning. I think we have to give ourselves a finite time to do that. I don't think we can stay in our negative mindset for weeks or months or years. But at the same time, I don't think you experience loss, and that is a loss, and all of a sudden glass is half full again. You're so excited it happened. I do think you need to give yourself a period to process that and then learn from it, pivot, come up with your new game plan.
Absolutely. There is time for sitting, reflecting, eating ice cream, whatever it is that you do to make
Wine.
yourself feel better, wine, and then move on. So we talking about your keynote part of the business, and you speak at many conferences and seminars. Do you have any speeches coming up that you're excited about?
I have a ton. Yes. And that's the great thing that they're coming back. I'm particularly excited about one of the newest ones I have added to my repertoire, so to speak, is a employer. It's a compliance audit from A to Z, but really talking about everything that an employer needs to know from a human resources and employer standpoint. And that was out of my comfort zone because, as you know, a lot of times my presentations prior to this have been more on what I would call soft skills, overcoming imposter syndrome, overcoming the fear of failure, knowing why failing is your hidden superpower, those types of things. So to actually give this, big substantive presentation to several of our human resource organizations throughout the state has just been an incredible opportunity to expand my breadth. And also now coming back to in-person presentations, there's a lot to be said for how you could best interact online, even though it wasn't necessarily as good of a way to connect with the person one-on-one. It certainly offered value in terms of connecting with more people in a geographic area. If they couldn't travel to the conference, you had a lot of interactive options online, and you also had the ability to have your presentation automatically recorded. So for me, that's not only exciting to expand the practice areas where I am giving presentations, but also expanding how I am able to take some of those things that were wonderful in the virtual setting and bring those to the in-person setting now that we seem to be transitioning back to that to grow my skill set.
A lot of people have a fear of public speaking, and you are, without a doubt, to me, one of the most natural at that skill set. What advice would you give to someone who's preparing to speak in front of an audience, a large audience?
One, I would say, don't acknowledge your mistakes. And what I mean by that is certainly if you give an incorrect fact, that should be corrected. So if I say, for example, say that something weighs 300 pounds and it actually weighs 100 pounds, and especially if it's a scientific or technical speech, right? That fact, is a big misstatement of what should have been said. Go back and correct it. Lots of times, though, mistakes in your mind aren't that big. Maybe you tripped over a word or you used a word different than what you originally planned or intended. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see beginners make is that they then acknowledge and point out that mistake. And when you watch a replay of yourself, and that actually leads into tip number 2, watch replays of yourself. I know it's uncomfortable. I don't love watching myself either, but it'll be so helpful to you in terms of learning what you do like and don't like about your presentation skills and improving. And so then transitioning back to tip number 1 is that what you will realize, and then tip number 2, watching yourself or listening to yourself, if it's audio, is that that little change that made a big difference in your mind actually sounded great to the audience or wasn't really a big deal. And but for you having really pointed it out, you could have just kept going and your presentation would have seemed flawless. And then number 3, I would say the other biggest thing that I see in terms of public speaking is to know your time parameters. And it is so easy to try and cover too much material or not have enough planned. And so the more that you're able to practice both at home by yourself, as well as just get out there and take that first step, just like me putting up my website, even when I wasn't perfect, the more you'll get comfortable with how much material naturally fits so that you're not scrambling and feeling like you need to come up with more material on the spot. And yet at the same time, you're not trying to cover so much material that you're talking way too fast, which of course I have a tendency to do naturally anyway. I have to watch it, and or that the audience doesn't have any key takeaways because you did put too much material and too little of a time to truly explain it or for your audience to digest the material.
Great tips. Fantastic tips. So besides your speaking engagements and running Spread Your Sunshine, I know you work at Shumaker Loop and Kendrick, the law firm. Can you tell us about your work there as well?
Absolutely. So I have been an attorney for about 14 years, over 14 years, I should say. And my background is that I have my finance degree from Florida State, and then I have my MBA and JD as well. And so I have a big emphasis on corporate clients, love helping businesses. And the primary ways that I do that are through our commercial litigation team. And so helping people resolve their business disputes, whether it be in the courtroom or through amicable resolution outside the courtroom. Of course, we try for that when we can. I also do a lot of employment law work. So helping people say draft their non-compete agreements or make sure that their employee manual is up to snuff, et cetera, et cetera. And then also I serve as a part of our PR and government advocacy team. So if you say do have a business contract and you want to have an introduction to someone else in the community, or you want help with a public relations crisis, or you want to lobby on behalf of a certain issue to the state or federal government, then those are all things that I can help with personally and or connect you with the right member of our team.
Excellent. So let's take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I want to ask you about your childhood. At Rocket Ship Consultants, our mission is to take your organization to the next level. Our team develops strategic communication plans that help entrepreneurs, corporations, associations, and individuals reach new heights. Our consulting team is made up of attorneys with additional experience in journalism, public relations, politics, broadcasting, and advocacy. Let us help you take that dream you have for a podcast or video show and make it into a reality. We can create networking opportunities, educational forums, and interactive conferences to spread your message. Let our team provide you with fresh ideas and inspiration. Rocket Ship Consultants offers a variety of services, so check out our website at rocketshipconsultants.com. Take off with Rocket Ship Consultants and launch your organization with us. Welcome back. Our guest today is Melanie Griffin, a keynote speaker, business attorney, and the founder of Spread Your Sunshine. Now, I want to take you back to your childhood. Tell us where you were born and what your home life was like growing up.
I was born in Bradenton, Florida, so in the south part of Tampa Bay, where I live now. My parents were divorced when I was really young, so it was just mom and me growing up. And my mom is a social worker by background, which is awesome because it taught me so much about empathy and community service and giving back to others. At the same time, given the focus that I have had on both serving business clients and then also being a business entrepreneur myself, I did not learn that business skill set from my mom. And I think she would tell you that she, again, has a wonderful heart for empathy. And she certainly, ran a tight ship in her organizations and yet didn't necessarily have the same goals or pressures or different objectives that she had to work on in her job that I do as a business owner and someone who serves businesses. So that was certainly a steep learning curve from me. One of the things I appreciate about my childhood, looking back on it, is that I lived in a difficult socioeconomic neighborhood. My mom continues to live there. And so even taking a walk the other day, she fosters Southeastern guide dogs, and I was walking one of them for her. And, there are certainly worse neighborhoods in our area. At the same time, there is drug use and robberies and things that I just don't see in some of the neighborhoods that I now work in. And so what I love about those experiences is that it really kept me grounded and opened my eyes to a myriad of different needs in our community and how to connect with people from all walks of life and what different people may need. And it's an experience that I have a 3.5-year-old. I really want to make sure that he has as well, that he knows not only what an A school looks like, but what a Title I school looks like, and that all of us are the same and that we can provide different services and things in need to our entire community.
That's incredible to know that about you. I did not know that about you. So I'm incredible to hear the different perspectives that you grew up with. Now, I know you are a triple graduate of the Florida State University. You have an undergraduate degree, I believe, in business and finance, an MBA, and of course, your law degree. So I worked with you and got to know you at FSU's law school when you were a student there. And I know you were an excellent student. Were you a good student in school growing up?
I was growing up. I was not a fabulous law school student, and it was really difficult for me in law school. I always like to joke that I think I was in the top half of my class, but at the very bottom of the top half, like I was scraping, I was like right at 51% and got my first C. It was not the only C I got, by the way, in law school, but got my first one, my first semester. And it was such a great, humbling experience. And I wish I had had more of that, honestly, growing up, because it taught me a couple of things. One is not to be afraid to fail. I remember in undergrad in career services working with the counselor there, who is just fabulous. She continues to be there today after over 3 decades of Florida State. But I remember her saying to me, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if you got a C. You can go after your dream if that is your career. And so what? You get a C to get there. But in my mind, that was inconceivable at the time. I had too high of a perfectionist standard. Thankfully, I do think business was the right route for me, and I was able to do well in the classes in undergrad and my MBA. But I wish now, if I had it all to go back and do over again, that my mom tried to say to me growing up, if a C was your best effort, that is awesome. The problem is if a C is not your best effort, that's when I'm going to be mad at you. But if a C was your best effort and you give it your all, that's amazing. I don't think I quite adopted that mantra soon enough. And the other thing that I really learned getting that C my first semester is that I then had to go to the professor and work with her a lot more and really learn what could I have done differently. And that's one of the things I like to say about speed bumps or challenges is that you have to reflect and ask yourself, did I do everything I could have to have made it the best outcome possible? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes, again, your best effort was the C. In my instance, that semester, because you took the same course going then to the second level of it, your second semester as well, it was legal writing. And the answer apparently was no, because the second semester, once I actually went in and worked with my professor, got her feedback and guidance on things that I was thinking about, including in my papers and my arguments, I ended up getting the highest grade in the class and being the only person in my class to make what they called the moot court team, this coveted team where you go and argue before different panels of judges and work on your oral advocacy skills, which is probably what's played in partially at least to my now keynote speaking career. And had I not had that opportunity to have been devastated my first semester, I don't know that any of that would have happened my second semester. I think I probably still would have hopefully done well if I'd done well the first time around, but I don't know that I would have been number one if I hadn't really had to put my, elbow grease into the project and really critically analyze what I could have done better and then carry it out.
I think law school is an awakening for a lot of people, because I think it does attract people that are straight A kids all the way through. And then once they get into law school, they look to the right and the left, and what they see is a very high achieving other students. And it's their first time that they're like, oh, wait, am I average?
I'm not the best in the class anymore. Yeah, I may be the best. I may be the worst of the best. And sometimes that's okay. Yeah. I certainly found that sometimes in law school. That was the seat that I was sitting in for sure.
So did you have any hobbies as a kid?
Yes and no. And what I think about a conversation that to me has been so poignant my whole life. And I really try and think about this now that I have my own child, is that I remember talking to one of my best friends, Mary, in elementary school. And I can't remember if it was kindergarten or first grade, but it was somewhere around there. And I remember telling her my schedule. And I said, I go to dance on this day and piano lessons on this day. And I go to choir practice on this day. And point being is that every day of the week was planned out. And so did I have hobbies? I did. I played the piano, I sang, I danced, I went to swim, etc. And yet, in part, although those are hobbies, depending upon how you do them, there's an aspect to that when it is scheduled out, it can go from becoming a hobby to being a part-time job as well, or more of a job. And so I think about that a lot now that I have my own child and toddler, in terms of I want him to experience things and develops hobbies that he loves. And yet I am trying to balance that with making sure that he's not so overprogrammed that those things continue to be hobbies, and that he has some downtime to just be a kid and run around and be free.
Now, I had the pleasure of working alongside you as you created and launched your video show and podcast. What lessons did you learn from doing that?
So as you know firsthand, Rosanna, I can be a technology disaster. And I feel like today is not an example of that. Thanks to your awesome coaching, I now have lights that light up my face, and you'll see my frames behind me that don't have the glass in them so that they're not shiny. And I actually have an Ethernet cord hooked up to my computer that works. But so many of these things or all of these things actually are not things that existed, as you know, from day one that I needed to be coached on. And so learning the technological aspect and learning to go with the flow was such a huge, important aspect for me. And I'll break those down briefly into two different parts. Is that although I think post-pandemic, or what we hope to be post-pandemic, that we're getting back to in-person events, I still think this virtual component is going to be something that we hopefully continue to incorporate moving forward, because although there's such a wonderful aspect of camaraderie to in-person events, we can serve so many people that for whatever reason can't leave their house or their geographic reason when we have virtual events. And so I think there are things that are going to continue to be online, which means that we need to be adept at being online. And so I'm so grateful that I learned so many of these things that are applicable to participating in that virtual experience, whether it be a meeting, a keynote, running a podcast from the podcast experience. But then also going with the flow is that, as you know, there were times that technology issues were literally occurring right up to the very second that we were supposed to start taping. And I had to really force myself, even though inside I'm, sweating bullets, all I can think about is, wanting to break down in tears or whatever it may be from the situation, putting on my happy face and making the show go on, because we had guests that were booked all across the country that were giving us our time. And in certain instances, it had taken weeks, if not months, to get on their schedule. There was no rescheduling that podcast, if at all possible. And so I think learning to roll with the punches, like you said, especially if you're an entrepreneur or in a high pressure industry, that a lot of times we don't get a second bite of the apple, and we just have to make good enough and roll with the flow. And so that was a great way to learn how to do that.
Now, I mentioned in the introduction that you hold numerous awards, including awards from the Florida Bar, your alma mater, FSU, and various publications. Do you have a particular award that really stands out for you?
Yes. So for me, I won the Mentor of the Year award from the Florida Bar Solo and Small Firm section, and then also the Mentoring Award from the Tampa Bay Business Journal Businesswoman of the Year. And both of those being recognized for mentoring mean the world to me. I will tell you that just as prized, if not more prized than those two awards, are actually 3 thank you notes that I've received over the years. And I'm certainly grateful for every thank you note that I get. So please, if you're listening to this and you've written me one, know that I appreciate all of them. There are 3, however, in particular, where a former student or mentee went into very specific detail about how the time we spent together made a positive difference in their life that was very significant, that would not have come to fruition for them but for our time together. And I would say, as much, if not even more than those awards, that those 3 thank you notes are really my prized possessions. If the house is on fire, I'm making sure my family members get out, including my fur baby. I want to make sure I have my wedding rings on. And beyond that, I would want to make sure I had those 3 thank you notes, because it just is just such a nice feeling. You don't mentor or give back to your community for a thank you, but when you do learn how you've changed someone's life, it is just such a precious gift.
I have a thank you note that I keep that's really precious to my heart. And I'm glad you mentioned the idea of keeping a thank you note and that it's a prized memento, because I have one that really touches my heart, and it will be with me wherever I go, wherever I move. It will always be with me. So I'm glad you mentioned that. On this show, we like to discuss entrepreneurial spirit, which is an approach to thinking that, actively seeks out change rather than waiting to adapt to change. It's, like a mindset that embraces critical questioning, innovation, service, and always continuous improvement. So tell us, in what ways, if any, these qualities have shaped your life or career.
For me, it has, I think, done at least a couple of things. I would say one is that, to your point about making sure that you're serving your community and that you're being responsive, is that it has, in a good way, really forced me to think about how can I best serve my community versus how do I want to serve my community. And sometimes that has taken weeks or months or years. And there may be times or seasons in your life where you choose to serve your community in the way you want to versus the way they need it. And a specific example that I'll give you of that for me is that when I concluded my term as president of the Florida Bar Young Lawyers Division, I had worked so hard at my legal career that I was a bit burnt out in that moment and in the preceding years that followed. And so there was a point in time where I worked on, as you said, making inspirational products. And while I love that and feel like I'm pretty darn good at it, I had girlfriends that said, your gift is in the ability to connect with others through your advice and your consulting, whether that be through throwing conferences, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, mentorship, etc. We think you're really wasting your time selling products. And now, as you noted, a lot of what I'm focusing on in this season is more of what they really wanted me to focus on. But at the time, what I said to them was, I need a mental break from services. I need to work on this thing that's just sexy for my brain in terms of, the graphic design and the colors and just stuff that has nothing to do with haggling over a bill or trying to justify the cost of my services or whatever it may be to someone else. And it was wonderful. And I did that for a year-ish. And that was the break that I needed. And yet, once I had that mental health break and was able to come back to, okay, how can I best serve my community? And I was willing and ready and able to do it, then listening and being able to experience the services that I'm best able to provide, then that's something I've been able to work on this past year and give it my all and not feel burnt out. So that's certainly, I think, been one of the top lessons that I've learned, in addition to, like you said, Rosanna, being able to think on your feet and pivot and react and learn that one of the values to putting something out imperfectly, although for those of us that are recovering perfectionists, it feels uncomfortable, but that you get feedback from others about what it is that you're doing. And I understand that, myself included, it doesn't always feel comfortable to receive that feedback or constructive criticism, but regardless, you're going to get it. And if you don't make yourself open to that at an early enough point, what happens is, as you all know, you spend way too long on a project that maybe you finally put out to the marketplace, whether it be a good or a service, and you find out that there's something about it that the market doesn't like. And so, for instance, a specific example, I have a card that says, "Extraordinarily proud of you, Sunshine, love your tribe." Well, I didn't really run that past anyone before I decided to print up the card. And it's wildly successful in certain areas, but there are other communities that find the word tribe to be inappropriate or disrespectful. And certainly that was not my intent in creating the card. But now I have copies of this card that I either have to write off as a sunk cost or figure out, the appropriate communities to sell them to, that if I had gone to the community first, and maybe I would have decided to have printed it anyway. Maybe I would have decided, this is what I love, I'm going to do it anyway. But you get feedback that you need to put out the most successful product or service possible.
So what projects are you currently focused on?
I recently joined a speakers group that I'm really excited about. It is called Book, Speak, Repeat. And so it works on not only your speaking skills, but all of the services around it in terms of how to best position yourself to provide private trainings, do follow-up sales calls. And so that's what I'm really working on building out this year, is my keynote speaking services to various organizations. And then also the follow-up trainings that I can provide in-house should a message really resonate with a particular audience member or client that I can bring to them specifically.
So for anyone in our audience that wants to connect with you, how should they reach you?
They can reach me on the website, spreadyoursunshine.com. We have a sign-up bar there across the top that allows you to sign up for 15% off our products if you join our e-newsletter listserv. And then you can also connect with us at Spread Your Sunshine on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And then at Sunshine_Women on Twitter. And hopefully you got all that down, because most of it's just Spread Your Sunshine. But if you didn't, you'll see links all over the website as well that allow you to just click on to our different social media platforms. And we share all kinds of nuggets of information that we would love to have you hear and also benefit from.
I love getting all of your advice during this show today. So I'm going to hit you up one more time. What advice would you give to someone that has a lot of spinning plates and wants to be successful at all of them, like you are?
So recognize that it may look like I'm successful at everything I'm doing. I don't think that's how it actually looks behind the scenes. So always keep that in mind, that everybody has speed bumps, that once you actually hear someone's stories, it is not perfect behind the scenes. So always keep that in mind. 2 is, I like to remind people, you will not get an A in every area of your life every single day. And so for me, what's important is that I achieve balance in the long term, not the short term. And so if you're getting an A, say, so to speak, at work, it more than likely means that at home, you're not spending as much time. Vice versa. If you're an A+ mom this week, probably means you're not spending as much time in your business. And that's okay, as long as over the long term, you look at that balance. The final thing I'll say here is that think about trying to tackle 1 or 2 things and do them well before moving on to the next project. As entrepreneurs, to your point, Rosanna, we have a million projects we'd love to work on. What I have learned the hard way, and I think maybe you've learned the hard way as well, is that you can't do them all at the same time. That just then in that instance, nothing gets done. And so I really tried to force myself and then anybody with whom I work to stay focused and help me stay focused on the 1 or 2 things that we've determined are mission critical at the moment, and to put everything else into, whether it be an app, a Word document, an Excel sheet, whatever it is that works for you, high tech, low tech. And that way you don't lose your ideas, but you just put them in the parking lot for right now so that you're not taking on more than you can actually handle and do successfully.
That curating of ideas is something I struggle with. So I'm
Yes.
glad you mentioned it. And I think it's important that to have other people that you can talk about your ideas as an entrepreneur and have them help you curate those ideas as well as help you stay focused on the key ones that you need to focus on. Now, I follow you. I mean, you talked about how maybe behind the scenes it doesn't look so successful and a little chaotic, but I follow you on social media and you look gorgeous and you have perfectly coiffed hair in every photo. What is up with that? Because
So I've actually been asked this one other time, and for any of you guys on the listening side right now, I'm sorry or not, because maybe you'll appreciate this advice as well. But because part of my advice will be applicable regardless of gender. Part of my advice may be more specific to females or not. But one of the things that I try to do is to think about my calendar in blocks. That's really important to me. And so I try very hard, especially now that we're coming back to post-pandemic life, when things are much busier and you're trying to run in and out of your home. I try and quote unquote block 1 to 3 days on my calendar every single week that just says hold for MSG. Those are my initials. I know it also means sodium. I know it also means a lot of other things, but it's also Melanie Shumaker Griffin. And so I just put hold for MSG, and I treat those days as fully booked, even if I'm going nowhere. And I like to do that because what I have found is that when you are bouncing between appointments, it is impossible to actually get any substantive thing done on a project, whether it be writing a brief or knocking out a blog post or writing an article for a journal or whatever it is that you're working on. You can't get that stuff done when you are running between appointments, right? You need full solid time to think, catch up, actually write, creatively process. And so I try to make that happen. And then that ties into the other piece of advice is that then the days that don't have those holds on them, I try to really purposely stack them so that everything is back to back. That's when I'm doing my lunches, my breakfast, my appointments. And so my days are kind of really focused on work, substantive work, or sometimes they're focused more on the networking aspect. And that's where it comes in the hair. Now, this is the quote unquote potentially girly part of it, is that what that also allows me to do, and particularly if I string those days together accordingly, is that, and this may be more you want to know, but like, for instance, I knew I had this podcast today recording and several other appointments. And I also know that my day is similarly stacked tomorrow. So I made sure I got up this morning, I worked out, then I went and got my hair done, and now I'm gonna look awesome all day today, all day tomorrow, potentially into Friday. And then when it's the weekend and I'm swimming with my kid or I'm working out or whatever, now my hair could be back in the ponytail. I'm not on anybody's microphone or on their, camcorder, their camera, whatever. And I don't have to go to the blowout bar every day. I don't have that kind of time or money. I look nice for the days that I need to, and I'm still getting my work done because I have those substantive days. I've got my networking days, and then I have my days I can just be relaxed, like I said, at home with the family, doing my chores, doing whatever it may be.
Brilliant. So we like to end our show with a little fun by asking all of our guests the same 7 questions. What would people be surprised to know about you?
I nap every single day. Without question. So I think that is just, I know it doesn't work for everybody. Some people get slowed down by a nap, but for me, I've got to get at least a 20-minute nap in. Usually after lunch, this is kind of actually, I feel very energetic today, thankfully, because this is usually actually kind of my nap time, Rosanna.
Well, thank you for being with us during your nap time.
Yes.
When you have guests in town, where is your favorite place to take them?
I would say if they're not from Florida to the beach, we have the best beaches in the entire world. As you know, literally we rank number 1 or 2, especially over here in Tampa Bay. So we have just beautiful, beautiful beaches if you're listening to this from out of state. But also I was thinking my home, because we love entertaining and have put a lot of time and love into making sure that our home is warm and laid out. We've taken all the hotel goodies so that, we have this for our guests. We've built the outdoor kitchen, that kind of thing. So just entertaining people and being able to show them love and graciousness in our home is also a fun feature, whether they're from out of town or from across town.
What is the name of a book you recently read that you could not put down, or the name of a show you enjoyed binge watching?
So if you have not yet read The Year of Yes, I am totally recommending it. I had no idea who Shonda Rhimes was until very recently. I must have been living under a rock because she created Grey's Anatomy, she created Private Practice, she created, what is it, something about serial killers or murder mystery or something.
Yes.
Point being is that, I mean, she's been, the genius behind shows for a couple of decades. Somehow I did not know who she was, but her book in my mind is fantastic. And it was one of the, I actually, quote unquote, read everything by listening, but it was one of the books that I just sped through because there are other books that while I've learned great nuggets from them, I struggle to force myself to listen to them because they are a little bit slow of a read. Hers, I got through in I think maybe 2 to 3 days because it was just so fantastic.
Among your close family and friends, what are you best known for?
I think I'm best known for having high energy, which you could probably tell through this podcast. And also, I hear a lot of people, I don't necessarily think of myself this way. This is definitely not me having too much hubris, but I hear a lot from my friends is what would Melanie do in terms of a situation? And they try and allegedly put themselves in my shoes and think, okay, if something's going wrong, or I really want to show someone, again, love, gratitude, what would Melanie do in this instance? And so, like I said, I don't know that I think of myself like that, but I really appreciate the people who have shared that with me over the years.
If you have a nickname, who gave it to you?
Oh gosh. So in college, and I almost don't want to say it because now I'm going to perpetuate it. But as I mentioned with the MSG abbreviation, my middle name, which is actually my maiden name, was Shumaker. And it's spelled just like phonetically like the shoemaker. And so I got made fun of a lot as a kid. But for whatever reason, when I got to college, just everyone loved it. And so everybody called me Shoes. It was my nickname in college, that Shoes, Shoeby. Thankfully, I left that safely behind me, or so I thought, at Florida State. But I would say that in terms of nicknames, of course, people call me Mel as opposed to Melanie. But in terms of another nickname, I would say that that's one of the ones that for a good decade, because I was in Tallahassee for about 8 years. And of course, it followed me for a bit thereafter, that was the main nickname that I heard a lot.
If you knew you could not fail, what would you attempt?
I would try to be Oprah. For sure. I think that woman's amazing. I think that there is obviously a lot of hurdles to that dream. But I've also seen people like Mel Robbins, who I think has a huge online presence now, in addition to books and other things that later in life have done that. And I just think that the ability to affect people and change their lives and give great advice is so much fun and just something that I love doing and would love to continue to grow.
What are the top 3 things you love about living in Florida?
Ooh, I love living in Florida. I'm a Florida native. Both my husband and I are not only Florida natives, we're Tampa Bay natives, which you rarely find. And so we love so much about Florida. One, certainly the beaches. I love the sunshine. And then I would say a close third, and I'm struggling with the fourth one, but I know you asked for 3, so I'll keep it to that, is the fact that we can be outside 365. And for those of you who live in Florida who took that for granted, like I did for 30 plus years, a quick story, my family has a 4th generation farm in Illinois. And I was up visiting my cousin when I was in my 30s. And I said to her, I saw this bike that she had made into a stationary bike, and this is pre-Peloton. So no one had these things. And I said, what is that? And why do you have it? And I was not being sarcastic by any means. And she said, well, it's my bike because 6 months out of the year, I can't ride my bike outside. And I thought, oh gosh, unless it's like, at least a level 2 hurricane, I can be outside 365 days a year. And that's what really made me appreciate one of the things that is so wonderful about our state.
Well, Melanie, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an absolute pleasure. And I got to learn, I know you for many years, and I actually got to learn a lot about you today. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. This was awesome, and can't wait to see the episode and all of your other fabulous guests that I know are coming up too.
Excellent. So be sure to subscribe to the Floridaville on all your favorite podcast listening platforms. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Visit our website, thefloridaville.com, to see some extras regarding this episode. Our audio editor for this podcast episode is Joy Tootle with Rocket Ship Consultants. If you're interested in sponsoring the Floridaville, or you would like to suggest a future guest, contact us through our website, thefloridaville.com. Thank you for tuning in.